I definitely did more ministry outside of my pastoral position. I'm not saying don't be a pastor. I highly encourage being a pastor if you feel called to it, because it really is a big ministry. But then if your church doesn't support you to do ministry, then find a place where you're able to do ministry.
In this episode, we're gonna hear an incredible story. A young man that felt called by God to serve him as a pastor and then became a bartender. You guys will want to hear this story. So welcome to Tea Talks. John, I'm so excited that you're here. Actually, I've been waiting for this moment here that we can talk in person because we met through Instagram.
Through Instagram.
Yes. So I'm very excited that you're here.
Excited to be here. It's very nice.
Let's start with your background.
All right.
Tell me how you grew up, who you are.
I grew up in definitely more of a conservative Christian household settings. I don't know if you know, but a lot of I guess the early 80s and 90s Christians, they definitely come from the ideal of struggle. And a lot of the Korean mothers are very spiritual, they're very religious, and they are impressionable. So I always grew up around church and I always moved around, but I've always noticed like the same similar problems among like, I guess, not only just a generational thing, but also like cultural and generational. So there's like a big divide. So that's kind of what I always grew up in. And that's kind of where I did a lot of ministry in my past. I've always been a part of bicultural communities with different generational gaps. And a lot of my studies have been in that area.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you next. Mm-hmm. So they were always Korean churches?
Most of them are Korean churches. I also worked in a lot of Filipino churches.
Okay.
A lot of mixed churches for sure.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of like where I grew up, and definitely always a mixed type of setting. That's kind of what I'm familiar with.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Childhood and then teen years, how was your relationship with God and church? I'm
not going to lie, I was actually very rebellious growing up, because I really hated the idea that I'm missing every single, anything Friday night. Whenever my friends were hanging out Friday night, I can't do it. Anytime it's Saturday, I'm missing out on the movies. I'm missing out on games. I'm missing out on football practices. So I was very rebellious growing up until I got sent to boarding school. I got sent to boarding school because they kept causing trouble. And I don't know if you guys know this, but those places where they send troubled kids and they abuse you for 15 months. So I went there, and they're always Christian programs. So I went there and I read the whole Bible about 6 times until I could memorize it at that point, and kind of ranked up. I found out that I didn't really hate God. I just hated the institution that I was a part of.
Got it.
And I just really fell in love with the Bible, the enrichment of it. And then I just kept really going further into that. So that was a funny turn of events.
The funny turn of events is what I already know about you. But we're going to get into it.
Oh, yeah.
So you were rebellious.
Yeah.
And then you went to a place that was borderline abusive with the styles that they were working with the young people.
Yeah.
But you said you fell in love with God.
I did.
So how was that?
I noticed that whatever I was being taught wasn't what was in the book itself.
But as a teenager, how do you separate that?
How do I separate it? I just knew that there's never going to be a perfect picture until we all get to heaven.
Exactly. You know exactly. I'm with you. The only thing is, as adults, we can see that.
Yeah.
As a teenager, sometimes it's really hard to see that.
The entire Old Testament is talking about how the church doesn't actually fit the picture the entire time.
You're right.
Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, even during Jesus' time, it's literally about, you're not doing it right. Especially the leaders, the elders, the deacons, the priests. Mm-hmm. It's always the same picture. So why, I guess, be against it?
I think you're a very intuitive young person to notice that right away.
Yeah.
What did you end up choosing for your career after that?
So for my career, the funny thing was I did my bachelor's in theology and my master's in divinity. I did ministry for 10 years and I was a pastor for 6 years. Surprise. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing until, I guess, last year in December. That's when I finally, said, I can't do this right now. I got to take a break from it. And ever since then, I've just been I guess the main thing is I've been a bartender for the past 6 months.
Yes.
And that's been my career transition for a bit.
And this is so I'm going to share a little bit of how we met.
Yeah.
I scrolling through social media, I saw somebody sharing your story. So as a young adult pastor who saw your story shared in her post, and I was like, this is incredible. Why? Why he went from a pastor to a bartender? Because I wasn't raised Christian. I was raised in a culture where people are Christian, but they're not really Christians. And then I became very rebellious against God, against church and all of that. And I became an atheist. And then later on in life, it's a long story, but I fell in love with God. And this was in my young adult years. Many years ago.
Just a few.
Many years ago, ages ago.
Not too long.
And I have a passion for young people. And when I find young people that want to serve God, and all of a sudden, what happened? Why he is not? What happened to him? So your video going from pastor to bartender went viral.
Yeah.
And you even felt like, okay, I need to explain this because the video really went crazy. Like everybody was looking at that.
It's almost like 19 million. And then I was like, I posted I think a month ago now. I went from 90 followers to 3,700 and
besides the views, people that didn't follow you, but there are like 19 million people look at that and like, what happened here?
Yeah.
So tell us what happened there.
I'm not gonna lie, it was not just one thing. I went through my Joe period finally. I feel like everyone goes through a Joe period. I saw a Christian YouTuber making commentary on it. Because my friend
on your video?
Yeah, on my video, like a pretty big Christian YouTuber.
Criticizing you?
Well, not criticizing. They were making like suggestions and commentaries.
Okay.
But when I watched it, I was like, yeah, I guess they do agree with a lot of the things that I said. I mean, for starters, it's not. I guess it's the church where I ended up at the time.
Okay.
It was definitely
so it's not like the whole denomination.
Not the whole denomination. It's just I just didn't know which church that I worked for at the time. It's like that's like the church that finally broke me. Because I've always been part of stressful situations. I've always been in leadership. I've always been fighting for young people, for youth, for generational gaps. I was actually part of the International Students Association before. I was a big leader. I've always been a leader. So I just felt like this was a natural transition. I was definitely up for the challenge. I just didn't know how difficult my last church would have been. Only after I finished it, I found out that for the last 6 years, they've either every single, I guess, associate pastor like me, English associate pastor, was either fired or kicked out.
When you say English, is because the church was not...
It was a bicultural church for sure.
And do you think the culture affected?
I think a part of it.
Because you're explaining like how Korean moms are...
Yeah, it was very...
more intense.
Yeah, I mean, it was so difficult that my head pastor also quit.
Okay.
He also quit. So, I mean, the thing that really broke me at the time was, number one, I just felt stressed going to church. Like, I would have panic attacks in the car on the way to work.
You said in your video that you didn't sleep for I don't know how long.
Yeah, I didn't sleep. I only slept 4 hours every 2 days for 3 months. Like, I wasn't sleeping.
So...
I was losing hair.
The stress was real.
Yeah, I had a mentor. But the funny thing was, my mentor also went to a toxic church and he actually quit ministry.
Oh, and when your mentor is quitting then?
Yeah, and I tried to call him, but he disconnected his phone and he was gone. And when I needed him, he was gone. When I tried to contact I don't know if you guys know this, but there's these things called ministerial directors, which is kind of like a pastor to pastors. He also stepped down when I tried to call him. So the two people that I turned to both stepped down. And then when I tried to contact my head pastor, he also quit. And everybody was quitting from different areas. And when I called my mom and dad, my parents were like, it was kind of like Job's friends, where they said, all this is happening to you because you have sin in your life. So I didn't even turn to my family. So I was just by myself.
Wow.
I was by myself for like 3 months, just bed rotting.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and then on top of that, I had a fiance and she cheated on me at the time. So it's like I have nothing going on. I had my Joe period.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's a lot.
like, first of all, I want to say I am sorry that you went through all of that at the same time.
Yeah, it all happened in a 6-week period, like everything that happened. So that was really fast. I was like, all of a sudden, I get cheated on. My head pastor quits. My mentor quits. My ministerial director quits, all within a 3-week frame, and I have no one to turn to. And then on top of that, I mean, luckily though, I want to talk about the turnaround though. Luckily, I had a therapist.
Good.
And he helped me through it. And I was like, man, I don't know if this is for me. Maybe I want to switch careers. Maybe I want to get into medicine. I want to go into like maybe the nursing field or something. I had no idea. But my therapist, he's like, do you know my history? I'm like, I have no idea what your history was. And he said, I was a pastor for 6 years.
You're a therapist.
And then I became a doctor, and I mean, I was a medical professor for the next 20. So I was like, what's the chances that my therapist was actually a doctor that became like another type of doctor who also was a pastor? So it was like divine timing. It's almost like God was actually saving me from a sticky situation. So I'm actually grateful that all this happened because, it's hard to change careers, especially when you're older, for sure.
You're still young.
I'm still young. Yes, I'm still young.
I started going to theology undergrad at 36.
Oh.
Yes. So you have a long time to go.
I have some time. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Yeah. That was incredible.
Yeah, and definitely under stress.
I am so happy that you had a therapist, that you had somebody to help you out. Now we need to get into the odd part.
Yeah.
Bartending. How? Because you're telling me that you came from a conservative.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't drink. I didn't know anything about alcohol. I have no idea.
Exactly. Not only you didn't know, but it's probably like very like, you don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't do that. You don't stay around people that do that.
I had no idea.
So now you're bartending. So how is life?
It's kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. It's probably one of the easiest jobs I've had. It's one of the most low maintenance jobs I've had. I mean, the real reason why I decided to bartend was because I saw this Facebook post. You know how they do those fun Facebook posts about how some guy went to church and somebody, like, his phone rang off, and then like he got like criticized by the pastor, by his wife, and then he felt bad, and he ended up going to like a bar, and he spilled his drink, and then they just kind of cleaned it up, and they're like, thank you very much. He's like, it's okay, people make mistakes all the time. And he felt like actually accepted and loved. And I was like, what if a pastor was there instead? Wow. And I'm not gonna lie, it's really been rewarding, because I talk about God all the time there to people that don't go to church.
So wait, you're telling me that you feel like you're doing ministry?
I feel like I'm doing the Lord's work more than I've been in the church. Mainly because when you try to do, like, I'm not gonna lie, every time I try to do some type of risque evangelism tactic, they're like, oh no, we can't do that. It's too controversial. And then when it succeeds, they're like, congratulations. But they've been fighting you the entire time. So I was like, I'm not working for any church right now. Why don't I just experiment with it? And it's been really good.
So you feel like you're being able to minister to the people that come to the bar.
Not only that, you know how difficult it is for for Christians, for like us, to actually do ministry outside of the church?
Yes, it's difficult.
Not when you're at a bar. That's all it is.
That is incredible. Yeah. I actually really appreciate hearing that, because my fear is not only that you are not a pastor anymore, because that's okay. It's that you would leave God.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the experience.
Oh.
So tell me a little bit about the, overcoming church hurt, and still, I am assuming you kept your faith because you feel like you're doing ministry as you are in the bar. Mm-hmm. So I believe you kept your faith. How did you overcome not allowing the church hurt to affect that?
Well, number one, it's not like God hurt me. It's definitely people around. I think there's a passage in Romans chapter 3, verse 3, where it says, just because, he's like, it is true that people have been unfaithful, does that mean that God has been unfaithful? And even in the harsh times, God has not been unfaithful to me. It's just people really damaged me, which is kind of what happened. That was it. Just people just damage me, hurt me. I do get triggered even when I still do try to go to church. I do attempt it. I made like 4 attempts so far, and every single time it's been traumatizing. And I'm like, oh, getting all these triggers back. I think last time I went was maybe 2 weeks ago, and I still go through these triggers. But
Is it
God's so
because
faithful.
people know that you are a bartender now and they say something, or
Oh, no.
other things unrelated?
It's just things completely unrelated. I go in as a fly in the wall, and I'm like, oh, things that people are saying, oh, the hypocrisy. You know?
No, I get it.
The judgment.
I get it because I have my own triggers too. As you probably noticed, I'm a female pastor in the South.
Yeah.
So there has been churches that don't want me to go there just because I'm a woman. And sometimes they don't even say anything, but I already have that in the back of my mind. So things trigger me very easily.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to focus and remember it's not always about me or knowing that I'm a female pastor or what it is, but it's difficult. I understand because once you have this, I know you told me, because we had a conversation before, you told me I'm really well, I'm doing fine now. But the traumas are still in the back of your mind,
Of course,
because the triggers come back because of that. So I get it. But I appreciate the fact that you are still trying to go to church and trying to still have this relationship, you know. Sometimes it's not easy to find a church. And sometimes we have to hop around until we find that right place.
It's true.
As you're doing pretty much a bar ministry, what are the topics or issues that you're dealing with?
Sometimes it's a dead spouse. I know there's two of my regulars. Their spouse has passed away, so they constantly come to me. They talk, they let things out, and then for some reason they are Christian. It's just, for them, it's a little bit difficult to go back to church. It's a little easier to go to the bar, but they know that I was a pastor, so they ask me questions all the time. They always ask me a lot of questions. They open up almost anything because I'm just listening.
It's got to be such an incredible ministry.
Well,
because it doesn't have any of the barriers that we have.
Yeah,
you know,
there's
when you have the title or
no titles, no rules, no regular, just listening. And people are very open, especially there. And I always do encourage them. Sometimes they're like, I'm not ready to go back to church. And I'm like, that's fine. I was like, go whenever you feel like you're being called to go. And I let them know I'm not ready yet myself.
Got it.
You know, take your time, you know, take your time for sure. Other times it's about how maybe their spouse or someone, they got cheated on and they just letting it out.
They're upset.
But they're talking to me about it.
Yeah.
It's always a good.
And it's healing. It's somebody that they feel listened to, you know? So, yeah, I think this is actually incredible.
Yeah.
You said, I'm not ready yet. What are the plans for you? Like, that you have in your mind? Do you have plans to maybe go back into ministry?
I mean, I'm doing it right now. Surprisingly, I'm doing it right now. I mean, I would like to be more involved in church again. It does take some time.
Yeah.
I mean, being involved in church is all I knew for 10 years, you know, like that. I just only done ministry for 10 years. And this is definitely a new transition. I know I don't plan on like leaving the church forever. Absolutely not. I don't plan on doing that. That's where you hear God technically the most, for sure. But I'm mainly just going to school and just.
What are you going to school for?
Oh, I'm trying to get into the nursing program.
Okay. So basically bartending is a temporary thing?
Bartending has always been a temporary thing. Okay. It's never going to be a full-time thing for sure. It was just there.
But now I want to go do bar ministry with you.
It's fine. It's very low maintenance. The pay is decent.
No, I'm not going to go as far as becoming a bartender, but I do believe in making ministries in the places where the people are the most broken. You know, and sometimes people, and I am very honest. I'm the kind of person that I like different ways of doing ministry. I don't see a problem with you doing bar ministry. But I believe that the person needs to know themselves. If alcohol is a problem for you, like a former alcoholic that becomes a pastor, maybe bar ministry is not for that person.
Definitely
Definitely not for that person. For me, that is not my problem. That's not my temptation.
Romans 14, I'd rather not eat meat or drink wine if it causes my brother to stumble.
Exactly. So but I would be very comfortable doing something like that. I know a young man who actually worked with this lady that they do ministry in, now I don't know, strip clubs.
Oh, yeah.
But not for the guys that are there, for the ladies that are dancing. So I love different type of ministries, So something like this, for me, it's actually very, very interesting. And in my past, that was the lifestyle that I had, before becoming a Christian, nightclubs, dancing, and all of that kind of stuff. I understand what they're going through. And what you're saying about the people that come to your bar and they're opening up and talking to you, I was one of those people before. I wasn't opening up to the bartenders, but I remember I would go to a nightclub, I would dance, I would drink, get super depressed. Sometimes right there you wouldn't notice because I was happy and thinking that this is the best time of my life. The next day I was completely depressed. So I understand what they go through, and I understand the hole they're trying to fill with alcohol and with women, with whatever it is, So I appreciate that kind of ministry.
For sure.
Has it been a difficult transition for you?
Honestly, not that much, because I just went in as a bar back, which is like an assistant first, because I was like, I want to try this out. So I went there and I'm like, can I be a bar back? They're like, yeah, sure. And then after 2 weeks, I was like, this is a really easy job. This is pretty easy. I'm not going to lie. I just put the same combinations. It's kind of like making potions, I guess, just do the same thing. And it's been a lot less stressful. Plus it works with my school hours.
Talking to people. Yeah. Have you found challenges in keeping your faith in that environment? Your beliefs or...
No, not really. Everybody knows I'm a Christian there. Yeah. I tell everybody I'm a Christian. They're like, oh, what do you believe? I just let them know what I believe. And then I'm not gonna lie, the only thing that I have difficulty with sometimes is a lot of other bartenders. They're obviously, most of them aren't Christian. Some of them are Nordic pagan, some of them are atheists. So then they always challenge me with these super difficult questions, because bartenders... Theological questions, super deep. And I'm always talking to them, and sometimes it's 8 people versus 1 sometimes.
What an incredible opportunity.
No, I mean these are heated it's not like us hating each other.
It's they wanted to know.
Yeah, it's we have it at least once every 3 weeks. I don't bring it up. They bring it up. They just talk about it. People outside the church talk about religion all the time. And these conversations go on for between 2, sometimes up to 5 hours, just right outside.
That is amazing.
It's super long. It's super deep. Some of them hate God so much. It's
crazy. I understand. Yeah. I went through my phase of hating God. That's why I became an atheist. In my perspective was if there is a God that allowed me to go through all of the suffering that I went, this God is evil. So I prefer to believe that God didn't exist. But I went through those things. I'm actually writing a book about it. It's going to come out soon. But anyways, in your view, so much happened to you so quickly that I don't even know if there's an answer to this question. But do you think, and I'm looking as if I was part of the ministerial team that hire young adult pastors, because you are not alone. There's a lot of young pastors that graduate, start working as a pastor, and they quit because of the stress, because of the burnout. What could church leaders do to help and avoid losing people like you, that even as a bartender, you still have a passion for Christ, you're still sharing Christ, know? Do you think there's anything they could do to avoid that?
I think, honestly, I don't know if you could really avoid it. I'll be honest. Yeah. I think it's a natural progression, because sometimes people fit better in another area.
True.
You know?
Sometimes basically they just chose the wrong career and they need to go somewhere else. But how about that person who really felt called? They really want to be a pastor, but they're confronting what you confronted.
That's always difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have 100% an answer for that. Mainly because I have difficulty going to church still.
Got it.
I have difficulty going to church still because I have a lot of triggers and a lot of trauma that I have in my my past because of it.
So it's hard for you to.
It's hard for me to answer it, but because the real answer would be like, it'd be nice to have support systems and mentors, but I had that and they all disappeared at the same time, including my other head elder who was really supportive. He had a trip to Korea vacation at the exact same time.
It was just
it was divine.
the wrong time.
Yeah. So
it was just everything was at the wrong time.
Yeah, everything was at maybe the right time in some ways.
Yeah, maybe you needed to go through this. Actually, part of the questions here is like, I think you kind of already answered. That's why I kind of skipped that question. But was there any positive out of this?
Positive? Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely at more peace.
Okay.
For sure, more peace. I've definitely talked about God to non-Christians in these past 6 months than I have as a pastor working last year, the entire year. So I definitely did more ministry outside of my pastoral position. I'm not saying don't be a pastor. I highly encourage being a pastor if you feel called to it, because it really is a big ministry. But then if your church doesn't support you to do ministry, then find a place where you're able to do ministry.
Yes, I think that's the secret. You know, there's a few things that you touched here and there. First of all, I do believe that mentors are crucial. A lot of pastors don't have mentors. A lot of young pastors don't have mentors. You had a mentor that disappeared.
Yeah.
But things happen. It's life. But I think finding the right place, because this church is not working, doesn't mean that every church is the same thing. You know?
As I said, I did pastoral ministry for 6 years. I've had a lot of great successes with the Lord. I've done a lot of great ministries. It's been great. Ministry has been great. Like 5 years of it have been great. You know, it's like, oh man, ministry is awesome. Last one, I was like, oh, I'm broken now. I gotta take a break. I have to take a break. This broke me mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I'm like, I gotta take a break.
Got it.
So not every church is gonna be bad.
Yeah.
The same way, it's kind of like when you go to restaurants. You know, it's like when you go to restaurants, if there's a chain, they're not all the same.
Exactly. You know? Exactly.
Someone's better than
for that
others.
young person who is going through this kind of struggle. I think, and we both can say something, but I think is, first of all, it could be just like what you said. Maybe the call is not to be a pastor and they need to find something else. But if they wanted to be a pastor, is look for a mentor, look for maybe a different place, a different church, and sometimes maybe a different type of ministry, different type of ministry that they can still do God's work. It can be something different.
Yeah.
I really hope that in whichever position that you choose, even as a nurse or something else with ministry that you choose to do, I hope we can work together someday. Because
absolutely.
I love to see the passion that you have to share the gospel, to understand that you found your ministry right there in a bar where we would never imagine.
True.
So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with me and taking the time to drive all the way here to do this podcast. I really hope that this is an encouragement to other young people that they might not have been a pastor, but they're struggling with something in their church, in their ministry, trying to serve God, but something is pushing them away. So that's my hope for this podcast.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.